All right, I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off by saying hello and, welcome to my first ever live Facebook. It's quite traumatizing. Now, just a little bit of a note about what I'm doing and what I'm up to. So I'm really trying to make a go of my business. The only thing I want everyone to know is that Facebook's really hard to work with. So although I've got thousands of followers, they only actually send my posts and my events to a really small number of people. So anyway, what I'm trying to do is, so people are basically missing out on information. Just say so many people and past clients and everything like that didn't know that I was coming to Perth. Well, trying to come to Perth. That's another story to do with COVID, but a lot of people are just not seeing my stuff. So trying to take, to say, the communication with my clients off Facebook. Well, still use Facebook, of course, but try to go to the website so that I can actually send you an email. I'm very traumatized that I'll end up being spam, but I promise I won't do it very often. But I'm just struggling with Facebook. So if you could please help me out by subscribing to the website, but also the more you click on it and comment on it and share my stuff and things like that, Facebook be's nice to me in the algorithm, and they'll think it might be interesting, so they'll send it to other people. Anyway, oh, Sarah, I got so many cool people. Hey, 2 Sarahs. Hey guys, so good to see you. All right, I'm going to start off. I got some really cool questions that were popped up, so I'm actually going to go through them. Look, I've even written them out with some notes, but they were very cool questions, so I wanna go through. I will try to keep an eye on the comments as well. Please feel free to ask a question. If I miss it whilst I'm talking because I've got no idea what I'm doing, I will promise that I'll get back to you. Thanks for the encouragement, Sarah. Okay, all right, cool. So the first question I got was a real beauty. It's how do I get my horse over pig rooting, bucking? She feels anxiety under saddle, especially in canter. She's been restarted. She's done extensive groundwork. She previously had a lot of no in her and would buck to say no. But now she only does it when she's anxious and you add speed. Okay, hey Alex, how you going? All right, not looking at that, focusing on giving my information. Okay, so you got a horse that obviously developed a habit basically of bucking. Had a lot of no in it, which just to me screams that, horse most likely didn't have a lot of clarity about going forward. And these horses that tend to have a lot of no in them and a lot of them back off and stuff like that. There's basically 2 types of horses when they get worried. When they get worried, some horses want to move and go forward, and some other horses want to grind to a halt when they feel threatened. So some will more likely to flip into flight, and they're the ones that tend to go more forward. And then there's other ones that when they feel threatened want to go and they want to, they'll flip into fight. They tend to be, the ones that tend to flip into fight, they tend to be very classic, your Frisian, you kind of more the European bred. Some particular lines of quarter horse tend to do it as well. A lot of halter horses and things like that tend to have this more of a predisposition that when they get worried, they want to grind to a halt. So those horses have a lot of problem guessing forward. Okay, so those horses that when they get worried they go forward, they're very easy to teach to go forward because they kind of learn it by accident, by their own natural disposition of getting worried and going forward. But those horses that don't can really struggle going forward and learning it. So they're the ones that tend to get a lot of no in them, and it's not because they're nasty or horrible, it's basically because they're confused. And those horses tend to be the ones that learn how to buck and strike and do things like that because they get threatened, they grind a horse, they can't find the answer, so they get overwhelmed and over the top, and that's when they flip into fight or flight, which is a buck or whatever. Okay, so what has most likely happened to this horse is that's become a go-to response. Okay, so it's done it, it's locked it in. So when it gets presented with that situation again or those emotions, it triggers it, and that becomes like a go-to kind of behavior that when it gets triggered to feel threatened or whatever, it'll buck. And it's obviously connected it to asking for canter. So it makes me I can be hypothetical and I can say, all right, there's a good chance that, is Facebook being shenanigans? Okay, all right, hopefully not. Okay, so what's happened is the horse has basically learnt this behavioral file, that when it gets presented with it, the situation or the emotion, bang, it'll be like a go-to kind of habit. So, and I'd say, because it's associated with canter, is that these horses here, though, so two things are likely to, or may have happened. I'm only just, as I said, it's all hypothetical, that in the canter transition, there was a lot of drive or chasing involved in it. So very important with canter transitions that you just work on the transition, the horse doing one stride in canter, not driving them to keep going, okay? Because then they go into canter, but they're still getting in, they're still getting a lot of pressure, so they don't actually know what the answer was, so they get very worried about canter. Now, Belinda, you will know about this with Mr. Bakari. That was what happened to him. So the other thing that can happen if they were cantered under saddle, they could have been ripped in the mouth when they went into canter. So the whole canter transition gets laden with all these like bad experiences, and therefore this trigger gets connected with it and this behavior. So basically the horse gets a file that when it gets presented with canter, it bucks. Okay, so this horse has been restarted, it's done extensive groundwork. However, it still will buck and pig root when it's anxious. So when there's an emotion, when it's anxious and asked to canter. Okay, so that file, because of the anxiety, gets flipped open, it canters, it bucks. What can you do about that? So my advice about that is you got to go back to the ground. Okay, go back to the ground, and what you want to do and what I'd want to see is I'd actually create like a simulation of putting the horse under pressure. So I want it to go, I'd push it into, I'd get it to do quick transitions in the canter, changes of direction, walk canter. I do that to stimulate a bit of anxiety, okay, to replicate that so I can trigger that behavior. And once I trigger that behavior, I'll do something about it. So I'll either do two things. If it lashes out or buck, I'll make a negative consequence, so I'll drive it more. Okay, so or I might I'll do something that makes it negative. Most likely I'll drive it, or I might, if I've got it on, if it's in the round yard, I'll drive it. Okay, if I got it online, I might give it a bump and then drive it on again. So I want that horse to become conscious of that habit, identify it's got a negative experience and put it away. But then also teaching the horse to cope with this level of anxiety and the canter transition. Plus, I'd also be very mindful of just focusing on the canter transition, okay? Not at keeping canter. That's the big mistake. So only when I see that canter transition being nice and calm and relaxed do I ever add on and worry about the horse doing more steps of canter. That is key to canter problems. Same thing under saddle. Okay, so I get it on the ground, I'd make sure the horse can, trigger, I said, set up a lot of kind of simulations, putting that horse under a bit of pressure, and making sure it can do that, do quick change of directions, canter transitions and things like that. Then working with it under saddle. Now, under saddle, the little hint that you get it all gone on the ground. I would also make sure I'd be taking this canter, I'd be getting the horse good in the round pen, okay, with the canter transition with saddle, good online in the round pen, and then I'd actually do my ridden work and fix this canter in the round pen. So the horse it's in the same environment where you're repeating the same thing, it's just the context a little bit different with someone on top, okay, that really sets the horse up for success. Then what I do, I would ask for the canter transition. Now, at any sign I felt that horse was going to buck or do something or grind on the bakes or had like a negative thought, I would bend that horse down and I would actively disengage its hindquarters. Okay, so I'd make a negative consequence for that thought or that behavior, and then I would go off again. Okay, I'd immediately ask for canter again. Okay, so that's how I'd address that. Go back to the ground, simulate putting the horse under pressure. Okay, make a negative consequence to any negative behavior. But I'd be making sure I'm focusing on clarity, making sure that horse understands that canter transition and only asking for more canter when they do that transition off a point and nice and relaxed, and only then add on more. Okay, and making a negative consequence on the ground if it does it. And then I said that little hint about if they go to buck, and normally I give you a hint about when a horse is going to do something. They'll tell you beforehand, right? They might twist an ear. You'll be able to see the behavior that comes before the bucking. And then if you actually are able to address or bend them down and actively disengage their hindquarters for a circle, and then go again. You don't actually have to wait for the horse to buck. You can wait for the horse to get that negative thought in its head, and you can focus on giving a negative consequence to the start of the bucking thought. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. So that was my first question. Okay, hope everyone's still here, and this is sort of semi-interesting. Anyway, next question was, how do I deal with separation anxiety both when ridden out and left behind? I think you've answered this question before. I have, but you can talk a lot about separation anxiety because there's a lot to it. Please just remember that what it is, it's not a thing, okay? It means that the horse feels uncomfortable, okay? So the horse that's being ridden out, if it gets separation anxiety or in the arena or whatever, it's feeling uncomfortable, okay? So it could be feeling uncomfortable about what it's doing, and it also means it might be uncomfortable about being away from its comfort zone, which is the paddock for its other horse. So with the horse that you take away, you've got to get them feeling like really secure and confident about working with you, and then trusting with you and connecting to you. So when you get the horse feeling better, separation anxiety is not an issue. Okay, the horse in the paddock is feeling insecure because its friend's gone. Okay, so with that horse there, you've got to you've got to give that horse a lot of experiences, just say, of being able to be by itself. Okay, so working that horse as well, making sure that horse that you've got in training as well. And also things that can really help with horses in the paddock is actually teaching them to tie up. Okay, like teaching them to tie up by themselves. People think tying up is really terrible and horrible, but it's not. It's actually teaching the horse that, sometimes it's got to be by itself, it's got to stand by a float, it's got to be tied up. And you don't have to do it, you don't have to tie it up and leave it for 16 hours. You just make it progressive. You tie it up for a few minutes at the end of working it, and then you can extend it, or you just make it part of the routine, okay, of what happens. And that can help those horses. But also making something positive for that horse when another horse leaves it, by maybe feeding it, that can be a good option. But also other things you can do is just, remove the other horse for, as long as it gets experience, that horse comes back. Okay, that there's a routine to it. The horse will come back, so you can remove the other horse from it for, increasing periods of time, and seeing how that goes. Another thing to remember is that horses, when they move and they're worried, they're working kind of it out of their system. So making sure that horse is in a safe place, but then just letting it move, letting it get out of its system. Mark Rashid, in one of his books, talks about this, about horses, winding themselves out of their anxiety and being able to, orientate themselves and feel comfortable. And they do that through movement. So he tells a story of his horse that got really, that weirdly got connected to its friend that it travels with at a clinic, because he used to travel around, travels around America giving clinics. And at one clinic, his horse got very attached to his companion horse. And he described how, he just left it in the round yard and allowed it to work itself out. And the clinic participants got really worried about him not being worried about it being worried. But as he just said, it just needed that time to wind that out of its system. Okay. But there's some tips that you can do for that. So, good training, getting the horse with you, giving the horse lots of experiences of being by itself, tying up training can be quite helpful for that. And lots of repetition. So the other thing to do, remind, if the horse only gets removed from its paddock or its paddock mate removed once a year, it's never going to get used to it. Okay, so it's all about repetition and giving that horse a lot of experience to learn that the other horse comes back, it doesn't die, it's all okay, there's a routine to it. That can all help as well. All right, how are we going? Everyone's still there? Okay, all right, my next question. This is quite a goodie. Okay, new horse coming to a new paddock that finds it hard to be still and settled. She seems to have a busy mind and she's a little aggressive towards the other horses over the fence, especially the younger horse. Now, guys, this is really normal. Whilst we are really good at generalizing the world, right? So you know, you can go take us to a shopping centre in Norway, from Australia to Norway or Germany or America or New Zealand or whatever, and we know that looks like a shopping centre. Okay, or we go to someone else's house, you know, that's just someone else's house. It doesn't freak us out. Okay, horses, it absolutely freaks out. So when they get moved, when their home gets moved, it absolutely goddamn rocks its world. Okay, it's like the equivalent of us being picked up and dropped in Mars. Okay, it absolutely completely blows their mind, and it absolutely stresses them out. Okay, so for a period of time they're really out of sorts. And I think this is like really like a big problem when people, you know, they buy a new horse. So they go off and they try this horse, and the horse is really lovely, and they bring it home and it turns into this nightmare, and they start thinking that the person they bought it from has drugged it and done all these things and hasn't been honest about its behavior, when really what's happened is that they rode the horse at the horse's home, where the horse was comfortable. You know, it was its home, it's what it knew. But then they pick it up and they transport that horse to Mars, and that horse gets stressed, and you know, it's really out of sorts, and they start judging the horse on that and thinking that's not the horse they bought. You know, you got to give horses time to get used to their new environment. Now, things that you can do besides just being patient with them, things to help them get used to their environment is having a routine, okay, and involving them in a routine. That helps them settle if they're able to start predicting what happens, okay. The other thing is exercise. So good old Canter therapy is fabulous for when horses get stressed like that, no different than us. Exercise is one of the most powerful things we can do for anxiety and stress, because when that horse is stressed and, you know, it's moved and it's really, really blown, its mind's been blown because it's been moved, and, you know, it gets all this, it feels insecure and threatened, and it's got all this adrenaline and cortisol being pumped into its system. If that horse does nothing, and that's what lots of people think is really good, just let the horse kind of settle in. You know, it's like, no, it's like adrenaline's pumping, and that's why it's attacking other horses and being threatened. It's really, really insecure, is to actually give that horse a job. You know, just getting stuck in and doing some groundwork and getting that horse moving and cantering and using up all those stress hormones and chemicals can be a great way of just helping that horse adjust to its new home. Okay, but yeah, time, routine, and exercise are your friend. All right, we're still going. Okay, here we go. Okie dokie. So, how to connect to a horse that is obedient and does everything you ask, but it doesn't like any interactions with people and would prefer not to be touched and interacted with. All right, now this is a good can of worms, okay? So now, first of all, I'm going to say up front, is some people, just horses like some people, you know, some horses are just not that touchy-feely kind of thing, and I kind of do respect that. And so I don't force an interaction on a horse. However, okay, it can be that kind of standoffish, that kind of not wanting to interact with you. That can be a sign that the horse has got a bit of a negative association with being worked, okay? So a lot of horses can be very obedient, okay, but they're doing it out of fear, okay, and anxiety. So it hasn't been able to transfer to that a situation where that horse actually trusts you, okay? So being told what to do becomes just the horse kind of reacting to make sure, like it understands what you want, but it's basically just reacting so it doesn't get, it's navigating you as best it can, but it doesn't find you reliable, it doesn't trust you, and it's got this kind of bit of like, you know, it's worried about the situation. So that's what can happen with a horse that acts like that. So it just can be part of their natural disposition of that particular horse. However, it can be a sign that the horse is lacking a bit of trust, and it's really just being, it's being very obedient, but it's not soft. I think that's another way of putting it. Okay, so what can we do with these horses here? Okay. So what I do with these horses here, if I get a horse like that, the first thing I do is I just, again, give it time, and I'm going to apply really good training, and I'm going to be really goddamn clever with using some positive association and some food. So with this horse here, if that horse came to me, I would treat it like any other horse. So what I do I always before I work the horse, I go and I catch it, I give it a carrot, okay? And after working the horse, it's party time. I give it carrots, I give it nice molasses drinks and things like that. So I make sure the session always starts with a carrot, ends with a carrot, okay? That's being smart. That's a positive association at the start and at the end. Then when I'm working the horse, so when I work the horse, I'm being 110 consistent with that horse. So I'm making sure that horse really understands and gets to realize that I'm really reliable. So yes, I can, if the horse doesn't respond to me, I will follow through. I'm very consistent with that. But the horse learns that, yep, I always follow through. So therefore they really learn to focus on me and follow me. And although to start with, they might get a little bit worried about me, they very quickly work out I'm super reliable and end up really liking me, okay? Because I'm reliable, I'm trustworthy, I'm always the same. So what I suggest in terms of scratches and stuff like that, like as I'm working the horse, I'm stopping it, I'm resting it. Now what I'm doing is during those rest times, I'm like rubbing on the horse, okay? So how you rub on a horse is really important, and I always teach people, I'm sure there's lots of you here that are listening, of how I've stopped you when I've asked you to give your horse a rub, and then I've stopped you and I've made you aware of how you are rubbing that horse. Because if you're rubbing the horse like this, patting on them and stuff like that, that does not inspire relaxation, calmness, connection. That's like someone coming up and slapping you on the back and rubbing your shoulders like this. That's not relaxing. That's actually not a very nice touch. And I always remember that I always remember this quote by Ray Hunt that says, you got to touch a horse like their mother licked them when they were a foal. Okay, so it's a firm touch, but it's nice and slow. And I always also touch a horse to do a check on myself about my level of energy coming out of me. So I'll pat, and if I realize I'm patting fast, I slow myself down, and I'm just giving them this nice, and I'm touching them, and when I'm touching them, I'm in my head, I'm telling them I'm touching them with love. Okay, so I'm rubbing them with some love. They're a good horse, they're trying hard. I'm here to help them out. That's how I touch them. Okay. Now, the other thing I do is I know where the nice scratchy spots of horses are. So what I'll do is, as we're working them, I'll start off just rubbing them, okay? And trying to rub them all over and judging how they feel about that as I go. But then I'll start scratching them in the good spots, okay? Scratching the spots that I know. So the spot I know is like along the brachiocephalic muscle along here, like in there. That can be nice for some horses. Horses really love, like if you just go the mane and below the mane onto that muscle, okay, and you just rub down on that one, that's I think even in the Masterton method, that's one of the massage moves. But horses, I haven't met many horses that haven't really liked that particular rub down and that particular stroking downwards on their neck from the mane downwards, okay. Under the chin sometimes, at the chest, okay, in the wither area, I will just try these classic spots with the horse as I go, and what you'll find is as the training goes and the horse's perception of working with you changes, as it finds you reliable. And not only that, don't forget, my big thing is I'm always setting the horse up to feel successful. Okay, so I'm getting it to do things and learn things, but I'm giving it time to show me that it's mastered that movement before I add on to it. Okay, very important. So not only is the horse working out, I'm very clear communicator, I'm very reliable, but I'm letting it get confident in things before I add on. Now, they're the biggest mistakes people make, okay, is that they lump the horse to do a lot, and then before the horse has got good with something, they're getting the horse to do something else, so I just tick through it and allow the horse to, learn it, be a bit hit and miss with it, and then gets better and better at it. It's only when it shows me that it's mastered it do I then go and add on. Okay, so the horse gets this good perception about me. So I know when that horse starts responding to my scratches and my rubs, I know that I'm getting to a really good place. I know that horse is no longer working out a worry. It's finding me reliable. It's developing some trust. Okay, so they're my hints about that. But any horse that just say doesn't want to touch, I don't push myself onto that horse. I don't. I give it a bit of space. I work it. I work with it. I let it get to know me. Let it get let the horse work out a bit about me before I start going and pushing myself onto the horse. Okay, so hope everyone's still with me. This is not too boring. All right, where are we? Done that one. Next. Okay, so I've got some comments here. Virginia, carrots before and party afterwards. You're really speaking Noah's language. I know Noah's language. This is every horse's language. And if anyone tells you that you shouldn't give a horse a treat or a carrot, it's like, oh, go away. You know, it's got to be something in them, in it for them. Okay, so my young horse enjoys the tail brush through the dried sweat. Yeah, they love that. Yep, all those good spots. Okay, Zoe, someone who can rub the good spots is worth having around. They are, especially if they also bring carrots. That's right. There's got to be something in it for them. Okay, it's good. It's not boring. That's good. All right. Thanks so much for joining, Alex. Hopefully it's not too early in the morning. And so lovely to see you, Deb. Mwah. Okay. All right. Number 5. How to address a mare that is sluggish to go through the transition and will put her ears back in the transition. So this is in canter. But once in the movement is calm and forward without making her more defensive when asking her to go. It's like during canter exercises in the round yard and under saddle. Okay, so I know this horse well, and this is the horse. So just saying, please understand that I really need to see horses to make a good judgment. So I'm really doing a lot of hypothetical here, which is really not fair on the horse, but just to give you some ideas. Okay, so what I'm seeing here in my mind is the horse, and I've met a lot of horses like this. You ask them to go. So common one, like just say I'm in the round pen with a horse. It's trotting around, I ask it to canter. Okay, and when I ask it to canter, it flattens its ears, you know, and it will, it'll tighten itself up, and I'll have to push it, and then it will go into canter. Okay, now there's a number of possibilities for why this horse is doing that. One, very important. The horse might actually have an unsoundness, okay, because the trot to canter transition is really where you can see a lot of just hind end problems. So first thing to consider with this horse is, has it got a problem in its hind end? So common things are hocks, sacroiliac, stifle, etc. And then pain is triggered in that transition, okay? That could be the first thing. 2, okay, could be the horse has developed a negative association with the canter transition, like what I was talking about before in that first question. So being asked to canter, you know, is a trigger back to an old memory, okay, of what happened. So this can be triggered by, just say, if it's under saddle, when the horse got asked to canter, you know, it got ripped in the mouth. So the horse got this big fright, it went into canter and got ripped in the mouth. So, and it could have happened a number of times. So that horse has got this really bad memory and association with canter that gets triggered when they get in that situation again. However, it can also be done when, and that's why I always say, when you're getting horses to canter for the first time or you're solving canter problems, just work on the transition. I don't care if it's just one step. I don't care, okay? Just the transition. I'm just working on that trot to canter because so many important things happen in that transition. Okay, there's a whole lot of the muscle chains change. They've got to go into that canter, their body adjusts, etc. That's got to happen. The next thing is like horses don't normally canter for fun. Okay, well, sorry, they don't normally canter relax. When a horse goes in the canter, a lot of physiological things are triggered inside them. Okay, because normally they only canter or go into that gait when there's something they've got to run away from or play. So it's high adrenaline. So they get a bit of an adrenaline rush when they do it. So just by doing the transition, I'm actually desensitizing them to their own physiology, which says go, you know. I'm repeating it, and I'm just getting them to canter, then I'm leaving them alone. Getting them to canter, leave them alone, okay? And it's only when they're showing me they're doing a really relaxed canter off a point, not kisses, not whips, has to just be off a point, okay? I know that horse is ready in a place. I know it knows how to canter. I know it's functioning and everything to be able to canter. It most likely doesn't, you know, its chances of being unsound or whatever or smaller. So I'm not pushing the horse that's in pain to do anything. You know, horses like standard breds that have to learn how to canter, it's giving them to that coordination of that canter transition is really important for them to learn, so they can learn how to canter. Anyway, going back, it's only when they do that I then will ask for more steps. Okay, so it's then that I then go, and what I do is when they get good in the canter, all as I do is when they fall out of it, I just smack my whip down on the ground. Okay, that's all. And what they'll be a bit worried then, okay, and they might canter off a bit more, okay. I don't make them canter and canter and canter. I might just get them to do half a circle and then I'll stop them and rest them, okay. But I'm teaching them that, you know, if they drop out of canter, there's going to be a consequence to it, okay. So that's how I teach them to keep going. But I don't get them to do laps and laps and laps. I just might get them to do, you know, half a circle, then one circle, then maybe 1.5. I build it up, okay. There are a lot of horses that once I just work on the transition, just stay in canter. Okay, I don't even have to do that step. But horses that don't have canter is like, there's a lot of horses that just don't naturally canter. There's standard breeds, but there's a lot of pony breeds, etc., that are more, they prefer to trot when they get worried. They really only trot and gallop. So you got to teach them to canter. But yeah, a lot of the more athletic ones that find cantering really easy, you won't even, as soon as you just work on the transition, they canter. Okay, so that could be one of the problems with the horse. So the horse has developed this negative association. So remember, ears back, some people see that as aggression, but it can also be defensive-ness. So, you know, they put their ears back, and you can kind of tell the difference when a horse puts its ears back, whether it's from kind of an aggressive emotion, anger, or whether it's from more fear-based and defensiveness. Okay, if it's just defensiveness, they'll just put their ear back and they'll kind of rush off and away for you. If it's from more of an aggressive type, anger type, frustration, you know, angst type emotion, what will happen? You might have to push them. They might snake their head a bit or turn it, and you can just see that that's more coming from like an anger emotion. And it's kind of important to see the difference there, because those ones are defensive, you don't, you know, keep driving them till they put their ears up, okay? But the horses that are snaking and acting a bit aggressive towards you, those ones I will drive, okay? Because I'll drive until they let go of that emotion. But those ones that are being defensive and putting their ears back and worry, you know, like, well, what's going to happen to me? You know, those ones you got to just, you know, you're not going to drive them and punish them for feeling fear, okay? All right. Next reason the horse does this is quite a common one. The horse is actually not motivated to canter, okay? And this is, and it requires, these are horses normally, you ask them to canter, you got to kiss, and you got to, you know, whip and get them to, you know, like to canter. They always have to be gone to the whip, okay? Anytime a horse has to go to the whip, that's you got some training to do. If you ever have to, or you're always going to the whip, or, you know, a good portion of the time you're always going to have to get the horse to do something by going to the whip, that's not good. That means you got a clarity problem with the horse, a motivation and clarity problem, and you got to fix that. My aim is although I have a whip, my aim is to not have to use it. Okay, it's a training tool to train the response and to maintain the response. But it shouldn't be a performance response, okay? That's going to be off my on the ground. It's from my hand cues, or my voice cues are in the saddle. It's from, you know, my legs, or you know, weight shifts or whatever. If you're still using the whip for everything, you got a training problem. You got to fix that up, okay? Now, these horses that are not motivated to canter, so they're not motivated to canter, and they're normally the emotions connected with it, they're quite irritated, or, you know, cranky about going into canter, and they require this external motivation, this external application of the whip or whatever to canter. So there's a lot of resentment. It's more resentment and irritation in the horse that's associated with that transition. Now, it's actually created by someone actually not following through. It's actually created by using the whip kind of ineffectively or nagging the horse, okay? And not just being clear. You know, you ask, you warn, whip. So you use the whip so you don't have to use the whip in the future. You know, but these are the people that kind of like will back off and maybe not use the whip. So those horses can have resentment and, you know, resentment and anger about it. So that's the 3 reasons why the horse could be doing this. 1, it could be unsound. 2, the horse has got a negative association with cantering, okay, because of a past bad experience. Or 3, it's just not motivated, okay, and you just really haven't got that horse really motivated to canter off your cue, okay. Instead, you're kind of nagging it into it, and it's doing it with resentment and irritation, okay. There's the 3. How do you fix it? Go back to the groundwork, okay. If you've got a round pen, that's the best place in the world for it. If you don't have that, it's on the ground. And what it is, it's just working on that canter transition, okay, focusing on the canter transition. And then just doing exactly what I just said in the other one, waiting for the transition to be really good and then focusing on the horse keeping cantering. Now, from doing that, you'll be able to have a good idea about whether it's 1, 2, 3 causes. Now, if the horse is unsound, the horse's learning will be inconsistent and its performance will be inconsistent. So it'll either remain sluggish, okay, it might get a little bit better and then it'll be sluggish again, or there'll be regressions. It might get better and then it will get worse, you know. So inconsistent response, but you've got to make sure your training's good, okay, and training's really consistent and you're doing 110% beautiful training of asking, you know, coming through with a warning, click or kiss and then using the whip, okay. It's got to be really beautifully done, okay, to make sure that you really have highlighted that this is actually like a soundness problem and not a training issue, okay. You've got to do really good training. So if the horses have got an inconsistent improvement, highlight, you should go see a vet, okay? 2, if the horse, I'll go down to 3. If it's 3, the problem, these will go away, the canter will improve, the horse's emotions associated with cantering will improve. Now, if the horse has a negative association, what I typically find is that 50% of those horses, their ears will improve. Okay, because they've got a lot of clarity and motivation to canter and the emotions change, and so does their negative association, it changes, okay? However, some horses can have that negative association of the canter cue so ingrained, it's actually pretty difficult to shift it, okay? So what I have seen is these horses still from time to time will put their defensive ears on, okay? Now, there is theoretically something that you could do with that if that really worried you and upset you, you know, you could, so you then go, right, this horse has a negative association with that canter cue. I have improved it. However, it's still stuck. This negative association is still stuck to this canter cue. You want to do something about it? Yep. What do you use? Pull your positive reinforcement tool out of your toolbox. Okay, and what you could do is you could first of all counter condition that cue, which means you can give a positive association. So what could you do? Ask the horse to canter, stop it, give it a treat. Okay, reward it. So the horse gets to anticipate canter, treat, and then it might be, you know, canter for, you know, a couple of laps, get a treat. You know, that could be some way that you could experiment doing it, or you could train. You could go through and you could actually train canter using clicker training. So you can use the treat as that, and you could rewire that complete circuit of how to train by training it in a different method. And that's another way of overcoming negative associations and learning with something. So that's what you could do if you're really worried. But look, most of the time, just by instigating a really good A-class training of presentation of cues and pressure, is normally the way you're able to determine what's going on here. So I hope that answer helped. Okay, some other really good things here from Debbie. Debbie says internal adhesions can also cause humpy transitions, particularly if mainly on one lead or if the horse won't pick up lead. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm really following the whole gelding scar kind of cases that a number of my clients have been working with, just to get a little bit of evidence about how significant that might be. Of course, there can be muscle tears and everything like that as well. So definitely, there can be a lot of things going on that can actually cause problems and discomfort with that transition. Because you've got to remember that a horse can be unsound but not lame. Remember that. Okay, that's very important. Now, Zoe, Bridgette has the crankiest thinking face. She's having a bit of a day. Learning how to identify that has been a huge thing for us. Oh yeah, Bridgette's taught us all things. Okay, that's you know, she's a brilliant horse with her. You know, she taught me a lot, that horse, especially about, you know, how horses can learn to fake being relaxed. That's thanks to Bridgette. Okay, now, good question. Now, Hanifa asked this question. I don't know if Hanifa's joined us today, but Hanifa asks the most fabulous questions, okay? She works with security dogs, and so she knows a bit about dog training, and she asked me some really cool questions. So anyway, this question's from Hanifa, and it's a beauty. So, can horses be jealous of each other? I.e., one horse will get pushed away from the owner and handler without food being the reason or the motivator for this behavior. So, can horses be jealous? Look, you don't actually know for sure, but I actually hope, you know, I think horses are a bit beyond that, because I think jealousy requires that kind of self-reflection and awareness of the human. It's like a human ugly emotion, okay, where you're comparing yourself to what others are doing. So I like to think the horses are actually above that particular human emotive trait. However, what they do have is, you know, it does fall under kind of potentially dominance theory or behavior, where horses can see you as a resource, okay? You as a resource, because they can associate, especially in paddocks and stuff like that, they can associate you with bringing them food, okay? So they can have that association that you might have food, but also you might give nice scratches, and therefore you are a resource. And when you are a resource, then they can see you as, you know, they want access to you over their paddock mate. Okay, so you can trigger some dominance behavior. Yeah, so I think I would say, I don't know. So you never really know whether a horse can experience jealousy, but I do know they can see you or things as resources, and they can express dominance over each other. So I think that could be perceived as jealousy. Alrighty. Hanifa, good. That got your question, got your brilliant question. Just gave you the big ups for asking the most fabulous, good and challenging questions. Actually, I've got a list of Hanifa's questions that I could that I'll have to post, because they're absolutely brilliant. Now, Debbie's gave me some other good insights. Had a mare that couldn't transition, particularly on one lead. Her ovary on that side was out. Oh yes, and also not just gelding scars, and also the whole ovary adhesions and things like that. Oh, that's really good. And it's after it was corrected and in some rehab time, she came back really good. Oh, that's brilliant to hear. I really like hearing some stories, because I have been following the gelding scars and, you know, their ovary adhesions things. And I do find that people have been initially saying, oh, it's really good and it's really helped. And then they go a bit quiet and the horse is having problems again. So that's why I like to follow the case to find out, you know, whether, you know, is it just a short-term thing, long-term thing? You know, is it a bit of false positive? You know, whatever, but it's definitely something I'm really interested in. Oh, Emma, good to see you, my friend. Okay, all right, okay, moving on, getting there. How long have I got? How am I doing? Not long. Okay, all right, so this is good one. Okay, so buying a horse. Ooh, do I have some answers to this one? So my question is, do you have any tips on red flags or things to look out for when buying a new horse? Yes, I do. Okay, seeing as much as possible when viewing a vet check is on my list, but wondering what else you know, and extra advice you can give, because I'm excited yet I'm nervous about taking the plunge of buying a new horse. And also it's going to be for my 10-year-old daughter, who's coming off her first amazing ridden horse, and therefore she can be a little bit nervous of new horses and people, which can make viewing harder. I actually think the fact that the daughter's a little bit nervous, worried about new horses is going to be like a really good, it's actually a good thing, okay? People think fear and nervousness is a bad thing. It can actually be a damn gift, okay? Because, if someone's going to be a little bit nervous with a horse, actually seeing where the horses can be forgiving or from that, or how they tolerate that or not, is actually a really good insight, okay? All right, so here is my tips, okay? So, first of all, you're looking for a horse, you find an ad for it, okay? Ad looks good, sounds amazing. You ask for a video, or you get a video sent. Or this is even if you are selling a horse. This is my ultimate video that I want to see, okay? Especially if you're looking at a horse that might be in a state or a bit of a height for you. There's video these days. So what do I want to see? I want to see catching. I'd like to see some tacking up. I'd like to see mounting. Okay, I'd like to see transitions into every gait, upwards and downwards. And this is the thing. I don't want to see any editing. As soon as I see editing, I get skeptical. In fact, it's really interesting. I can probably say that the majority of videos I see for sale, strangely enough, it misses the transition into every single into walk. You see the horse walking, then it's trotting. You see all the editing. And then you might just see, one canter, but you never see the transition into it, because it's the transitions that tell you the gold about how the horse transitions in and out of energy, okay? So that tells you a heap, okay? Even better to have videos of the horse floating, picking its feet up, just little things like that. And if you're out there going to sell a horse, make up the ultimate video of all those things, and that's a really helpful, honest video that will find your horse an awesome home. Okay, finding out why they're selling. I'm kind of like I'm like the bit of the reader behind the words they use. So little things that I'll tell you. So this is some common things that get told about why they're selling the horse. Well, the horse is not going to make it to the next level in jumping or eventing. That can mean the horse is unsound, or or has been freaked out, or has been fried maybe in its career so far, and therefore they're getting rid of it. Or this one, not bold enough for eventing and jumping, and therefore make the perfect dressage horse. That means the horse gets anxiety and has been freaked out or overwhelmed in its job. This one, the horse has stopped jumping or eventing at at a particular height. Okay, so it got to a particular height and then it just stopped jumping it, so it's, that one. Now, but it's okay at a lower height, okay? That means the horse has got unsound, it's unsound, or it's got unsoundness brewing. Okay, that's my horse seller whispering. Okay, or this one, had a problem, but it was due to the saddle. That means the horse is unsound. Okay, or had foot problems or something like that. If the owners ever balk or make excuses for a vet check, or they try to sell it to you on an old vet check, that's like red flag, warning, warning. This one here, also be aware of any horse that's been sold by a professional rider. That typically means the owner's too scared to ride it. Okay, and that says something. Now, I'm one, you can transform horses, but the thing is, if you're going to buy a horse, you don't want to be buying problems, or if it does have some problems, you want to know about that, because that might reflect the price. If you've got to do some work on that horse, and normally, look, there's not a horse that you're ever going to get that's necessarily going to be perfect, but you certainly don't want to be buying someone else's baggage. Okay, so you want to start off, you're going to spend money on getting the horse that has kind of the least baggage, okay? Or if it's got baggage, you don't want to have it as a surprise discovery. You want to know about it up front. It lets you make a decision about whether you'll take that horse on enough, because it's a massive investment. There's a lot of money outlay, and there's a lot of work, and of course there's the whole safety thing, okay? So this is my tips for going and viewing a horse. When you go view a horse, go early, rock up early, okay? It's amazing what you'll see when you rock up early. You might see the horse has been lunged for an hour before you get there, okay? So go early, say that you want to see it being caught and tacked up, not all ready to go with its beautiful white bandages on in the arena being ridden around, okay? You want to see the whole lot. Okay, and things, as I said, things I look at are transitions. I want to see what the horse says, because the horse talks to you, right? The horse tells you all about itself. You know, how it gets caught, how it ties up, what it thinks of being saddled, what it thinks about being mounted. All those things are really important. They give you insights into how that horse feels about being ridden and any potential training problems or negative associations it might have. And it's not saying those things can't be fixed, but you want to know about them up front, okay? Always get someone else to ride it first. Don't be like getting on it because, you know, that you rock up and, you know, classic one is the owner will have an excuse. Oh, I hurt my back yesterday, or some excuse. Don't. There's not someone there to get on it first. Don't you dare get on it, okay? Also, go view it a number of times. People that are genuinely selling a horse, they want that horse to go to a great home, okay? So they will accommodate it. So any kind of bad attitude from owners, that's red flag, walk away. Okay, my most important advice though for horse selling and horse buying is please be patient. Be patient. The people that I have had to beg and plead to be patient have ended up with really good horses. Okay, be prepared to travel. Don't rush in and buy the horse just because you've been looking for 6 months or there's nothing around. Don't do that. The right horse is gold and it's going to save you a lot of money and heartache. Okay, now another thing is the best horses are not sold on ads. The best horses are sold by word of mouth. So get around there, talk to people, ask people. People know what people have in their paddocks or what, you know, what their kids are growing out of, or, you know, their daughter's lovely pony club mounts there, but she's going off to university or not riding it. You know, the best horses out there are actually not advertised. So, you know, put it out there, ask what's there. Final thing is, do not buy sight unseen. Okay, that's really going to stuff you up. Okay, it just is so full of risks. Spend the money, go and see it. It might involve, you know, a plane ticket. Do it. A plane ticket is not as expensive as a $10,000 horse that's causing you a heap of problems because you discover it's got some problems you got to work through. You know, don't buy sight unseen. Take your time, be patient. Trust me, the right horse will turn up. Okay, so there's my tips for that. How am I going with questions? Is there ever an end to sensitive horses' reactiveness? There is. A lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of experience, Em. It's a lot of hard work. Some horses have more of a tendency to be like that, and those require a lot of time. A lot of going out and about and doing things with them. That's the best thing that can be done for them. But if a horse is still sensitive and reactive, always consider my tip for that is unsoundness. Okay, I have not met a difficult, inconsistent horse that hasn't ended up having a soundness issue, whether that be chronic ulcers, whether that be a neurological condition, okay, whether that be weird things like neck arthritis and things like that. So just always have that in the back of your mind. You also need to know if you are capable of working on the particular problem. Absolutely, Beck. That's why that's why. So a horse might have something like, just say, you know, it goes fine, but it's a bit funny getting like on the mounting block. Okay, that's something that can be pretty easily fixed. Okay, but as long as it goes good in everything else. So exactly, you need to know you're capable of working on that problem. Now, Hanifa, yep, saw my horse getting caught saddled and Yona ride before me. That was brilliant. Yeah, that's the good way. All right, so Rumba's still being dramatic. Oh, bless her. Okay, I'll have to catch up with you next time I'm in Perth. Okay, so last couple of questions. How am I going? Woo, 7 minutes. Okay, I have a young horse that was mouthed badly. He's oversensitive and anxious about the bit and was going all right until I started teaching him leg yield. And his anxieties became spooking. So returned to the round pen and to Bitless as he wouldn't settle enough in the arena. Would I teach him to move off my leg in Bitless, then return to the arena? What style of Bitless is the safest in this case of trouble? What exercises would you recommend? And he can be a little resistant to bending with the Bitless, but too sensitive in the bit. She's using a straight bar egg butt bit, and hope that makes sense. Okay, so what do I recommend? Bitless, I'm just someone, I just use I'm just a side pull person. I don't use anything special. And if you've got a bending problem, tip, it means the horse is actually more targeting So I get these people that go, oh, my horse just doesn't bend, it doesn't steer very well. And I go, let's have a look at lateral flexion. And they'll go, lateral flexion is brilliant. And they'll pick up one rein just a little bit and the horse will fling its head around this way and then fling its head around that way, or it might fling its head around, touch a boot. There's your problem, okay? The horse hasn't actually learned to follow the feel of the bit or the side pull or the halter. It's just targeting. So it feels that pressure on its face and goes, has to fling my head around. So it hasn't actually learnt. There's the hole and potential hole in the training. Horse has not learnt to follow the feel. It's just feeling a trigger and targeting and turning its head around. It's not following the feel. Very, very important. That can be a trap with mouthing, okay? Now, I can tell what's happened here, right? Horse has been going okay. However, what happens when you do leg yield is what happens is that the horse, when it puts that leg on to go sideways, its first response, the answer to the question will be, I go more forward, okay? And then what happens, you've got to close the door in the face. So what the horse can get very conflicted. This is the kind of the application of two things at once that can blow its brains. So it's going, but you just asked me to go forward, but now you're grabbing me on my face. That's stop. So they interpret stop and go cue, and that can freak them out, okay? And then they lose confidence in the bit and etc. So what I would do, I'm going to tell you very quickly what I do, okay? Get that horse, just walk, trot and canter. First of all, fix up the potential problem with steering, okay, which is the whole, the horse is not following the feel of the rein or the bit on its face. It's just been triggered to target, okay? Then I go back in the side pull, just get nice walk, trot and canter, get it in the round yard, and then just make it simple. Don't pick it up, don't care about a frame. It's just forward, it's just bending to stop, using the bend for transitions. Just get that horse's confidence back. Then I put the bit back in the mouth. Now I recommend, my go-to bit for starting horses or problems is the Myler Mullen mouth, okay, straight bar. I personally haven't had a horse, I haven't been able to help with that bit. And I just ride off the side pull and I get them to carry that bit around, okay? They've got to habituate to that bit. They've got to get used to that bit of metal in their mouth, and they've got to get used to it before you pick it up and pull on it. Then what I do is when it's riding around in it, they're happy with that, they're accepting it and taking it out at the end of the ride, I'll then on the ground clip my reins to the bit and do the lateral flexion on the ground. Then I progress, and after riding it around just on the side pull, I'll clip it onto the bit just at the end of the ride and do a bit of lateral flexion before I get off, okay? Then I progress to starting riding on the side pull, and then riding it halfway through the ride, I'll clip it to the bit. Okay, so I introduce it that way. Now, when you do the stop cue, I do that on the ground. Okay, so I teach the horse to stop by picking the bit up from the ground. Okay, so I'll get the bit under the chin and I'll stop them with it. Okay, so I'll stop, get that first stop and then back up, okay? But I do that from the ground, so they get that pressure on the ground first. Then I'll introduce it under saddle when they're really, really good on the ground, when they've really got used to that pressure of that bit in their mouth, okay? Now, leg yield, how you get leg yield good, okay, is that, first of all, teach that leg cue on the ground, okay? So teach that leg pressure cue on the ground. So what I'll do is I'll bend the horse around in the lateral flexion on the ground, and then I'll push my hand into the spot. I actually use the stirrup, okay? I use the stirrup into that spot that I would be wanting them just to do a hindquarter yield. So I teach them to do hindquarter yields on the ground, okay, first. And then under saddle, so just yielding the hindquarters, make sure that's really good. Then I'll teach them what's called a rein yield. I can't really describe it here, but I'll get control of the shoulders by pushing the rein into the shoulders. I basically teach horses to fall in and out their shoulders. I put that on control because that helps them. Now, introducing shoulder in under saddle, do it nose to the wall, okay? So you come around the short side of the arena, you cut the corner, nose to the wall, okay? And then you tip their nose a little bit to the outside, slide your outside leg back, and see if you can get a little shift of movement and then ride out of it. Okay, just ride forward. But nose to the wall stops you picking up the rein and confusing them, which is probably what's blown his mind a little bit. Okay, so I hope that gives you some hints. Next thing, final question. All right. Oh no, I've got two more. How long have I got? I've run out of time. I'll do this one very, very quickly. Okay. So I've had my mare Cindy for 12 years. She came to me in foal and she wanted the ground to swallow her up. She can do liberty and she goes straight on the float when I point and I can catch her, no problem. And I can put a holder on, no worries. But she's still uncomfortable doing that. And I'd like her to be happy to be caught. You know, what can I do? Now, Clydes are interesting cases. They're kind of some of the most kind of complex, the really complex flea horses I've had have all had a bit of Clyde in them. Again, I would, with this one here, I would pull my my clicker training and counter conditioning out of my toolbox. So I do a bit of an experiment with this horse. So I'd just catch her and give her a carrot and walk away. Okay, I'd do that for a number of days and I'd wait to see, you know, how she approached me and the holdering and all that. I'd do that for a number of days. And I would see what happens and I would add on. Then if that got really good, I'd catch her, halter her, walk her a bit, give her a carrot. I'd be experimenting with that. The other thing that I would do, these horses here with these Clydes that are really fearful, the release of pressure sometimes might involve you to really move away from them. Okay, so I've got a video actually on the group that you can search for. I showed a Clyde cross, okay, that I actually, when I gave it a big release of pressure and told it was good, I actually walked out of the round pen, okay, because just my presence was still pressure. So that's something that you can go with. But yeah, using clicker training and positive reinforcement can help counter condition that kind of fear response. But also you can use clicker training to build new circuits, new learnt behavior, and you can reboot that behavior using a different circuit with different emotions and everything attached. So that's what I do. The other thing is, and I know she's been with you for a while, but have you ever given her like a massive spell? The really true human fearful horse I've ever worked with has actually done well from a massive spell. Now, I mean, I think he's been on spell for about 18 months, 2 years, and he's just been allowed to be a horse, and he has really come back from that spell really quite changed. Okay, just let him be a horse, completely like kind of left alone, and that has done amazing things. So spelling can be amazing for the chronically stressed horse. Anyway, I'll leave you. I've gone on enough. I'm 2 minutes over time. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed my first Facebook Live, and thank you for joining me, and I'll run another one sometime. So please, if you could help me out with like clicking and sharing on my stuff and joining my website and helping me out that way, so I can make a living, that would be very awesome. So thank you all for your time, and I'll see you soon. Bye.